Dane Sensor, Robert Beach. I wanted to make a comment. I take the bus from Grover Beach, the regional transit, the local transit, and lately my experiences on the buses with the dogs. I have pictures of several incidents where people are bringing pit bulls on those buses. Now, if you can tell me a pit bull is a service dog, then something's wrong in this county, because I've never in my life seen a pit bull as a service dog. And I feel sorry for the drivers, the bus drivers. These guys deal with a lot of things, from alcohol to drugs, misbehavior, acting up on the bus, people running in front of the bus to stop the bus to get on. I've seen it all. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not a pleasant situation, and when you got to take 3 or 4 buses and spend 2 hours to get to work in the morning, by the time you get to work, I mean, you're already drained. I mean, to have a pit bull to come on a bus, do you know that a pit bull within 1 bite could kill a young child? That quick, that quick. And they're saying they're service dogs. They're not showing any cards. And the other day, the young man with his dog sitting there right next to him on the seat, some of these dogs are filthy. The health and safety hazard of that. This really needs to be looked into. There needs to be some protocol of saying, if you are bringing a service dog on, usually a service dog has a vest on it, or they have a card. But the bus drivers are terrified and say a word to them. Guess why? They don't want to get sued. I don't blame them. You know, this is an issue here that should really be looked at, because sitting on a bus going to work, what can happen? I really, if I was a parent with kids, and I brought my kids, little 6-year-old, I see babies on there. I see 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and a pit bull next to it. I mean, what's the danger of that child being bitten by that dog? I wouldn't want to be the parent, or I wouldn't want to be the bus driver to be in a situation like that. Something really needs to be done to address it and really qualify those people who do have the right to have a service dog on a bus. But just to let you, just because you want to get from point A to point B and you don't feel like, you know, it's really something that needs to be looked in. I hope you look into it. Thank you.
And I'm glad to see you all here this morning. I notice, just for the record, that you have in front of you the executive committee minutes for December, but not the ones directly leading up to this meeting, unless they're somewhere that I haven't seen them. So those of you who were at that meeting, if issues came up there, the others don't necessarily know about it. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was, given that negotiations, labor negotiations, are likely about to start, I know that management normally acts to protect the public purse, and you know, it's all well and good that it does so. It shouldn't forget the public purse. But I want to just think, I want to be sure we're all thinking of another whole issue there too. And that is that not just anyone can walk in off the street and into the driver's seat of an RTA bus and handle that situation. Our lives depend on these people every day. And those of us who use the service are alive today because the right people, well-trained people, dedicated people are in those driver's seats. And that has a value. So while you're protecting the public purse, remember that as well. I'd say it's even more important, the fact that there are citizens alive today because the right, qualified, dedicated people are driving those buses. We are alive today. And that's something to not forget 1 second of the time that you're involved in the labor negotiations. And just with my last minute, I am delighted that one of the exceptional among the exceptionals is being recognized today. And I just am so happy to see Jewel being recognized, because I have been on her bus at times when She has needed every bit of defensive driving skills because some other crazy person in the traffic does something completely unexpected. And all of us who were on her bus are alive, uninjured, and unshaken up because she has the skills, the cool head, and the constant attentiveness. See, not even I could be constantly attentive. Unfortunately, nobody had an accident because of my finger being in the wrong place. But anyway, I just wanted you to have these things in your mind as we go on about our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Over 20 nominations for Employer Operator of the Quarter. And so the program is going very strong. And Jewel, the program's been going for a year now. And Jewel was nominated in every quarter that we've done this. So her passengers really appreciate the work that she's doing. The comments are very, very complimentary. Some of the things that come to mind is Jewel is very respectful, and she is an excellent driver. She makes me comfortable on my way to work in the morning, you know, and just an enjoyable. She's the reason why she's the face of RTA, and it's very important what she does, and we really appreciate it.
And you'll notice that on her right shoulder it says Employee of the Quarter, so as passengers get on the bus. And it's a special green shirt that the Employee of the Quarter gets, otherwise they're a light blue shirt, so there's some pictures up there of our barbecue as well. You see it up on the screen there. But Jewel, thank you for all you do, and you're a great representative of our folks.
Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you for everyone. Thank you very much to all the people I've worked with. A couple of these people a little bit longer than I've worked with Jeff and Phil, but I would really like to thank them for honoring and acknowledging that myself and the other drivers have been doing this a lot longer than I have, and that I feel like I've learned at their knees, and that I'm sure will be honored in the future. But thank you for doing this. I think this is the first time, as far as I know, that RTA has done this, and these two men have brought this to the forefront. And Tanya, Anna, Trina, Omar, thank you for everything and all your support. It's a great company to work for. I like coming to work every day. And I haven't always said that about other jobs. Thank you.
We greatly appreciate what you do. It's not an easy job. We know that. And driving down here over the grade there most through the week, I can see some of the crazies out there as well. So you have to dodge those, and you've got a whole bunch of people to be responsible for, and we greatly appreciate what you do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you for my time for coming all the way down from
Just to add on that, we've seen great success from this program, and we're actually opening it up to the rest of the folks covered under the collective bargaining agreement. So that includes the mechanics and the vehicle service workers who wash the buses. So we'll roll that out at our next meeting. Our next barbecue is April 19th, so put that on your calendar, please. Noon at April 19th at our facility. You can see we have great food, great times. Go up one slide, or the last slide. I want to show one thing. If you look up in the upper right corner, that's a barbecue that our mechanics modified, and I see a little bus dancing on top of RTA up there. So the mechanics are great. It's sort of a national thing in the industries. Mechanics love to do barbecue, and we would win any competition, hands down. Our bus operator. Well, one other thing I'm really happy about is our retention is getting better. Our driver retention. We went almost 6 months without having a training class. Since I've been here, it's been constantly trying to keep drivers up with classes of 10 to 12 to 15 people per class. We have 4 operator trainers right now, and the first class is the longest period we've gone in anybody's memory that we haven't had to get another class. So we expect to have those drivers ready for service in mid-April. Maintenance, unfortunately, we bus 148, which is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's a 1995 bus. It traveled over 1 million miles, blew its engine a couple weeks ago, or actually a few weeks ago. We decided, since we have new buses coming in April and May, that we're going to just mothball this vehicle. We worked with the city. They've offered to give us some spare vehicles if we get into a real crunch, but we don't feel it's worthy to put $12,000 into such an old vehicle. So we do we anticipate a little extra overtime in the shop to keep the remaining fleet going, but we will keep an eye on that. We also put into service 3 minivans, which gives us a total of 6 right now. These minivans are much more maneuverable into small neighborhoods. We use them on the runabout service. We now have 6 of them, and they get better gas mileage. I think the drivers really like them. A lot of the passengers really like them as well. So we're happy to get those in service. In terms of service planning, we got a number of grants that I mentioned, or grant-funded planning studies that we're working with SLOCOG on. They're mentioned here in the report. I just want to mention that the bus rapid transit study, we have a meeting coming up here on April 16th, so we'll have a first chance at looking at some alternatives for ideas to improve the speed and reliability of service along the 101 corridor. In terms of the summer beach trolley, we'll talk a little bit more about that under A3, but we are continuing to work on that. One thing that's pretty exciting is we're working with the city of San Luis Obispo to do a joint short-range transit plan. So we're trying to get them in alignment. It's always been in the past, they do theirs, and a year or two later we do ours. And when we try to coordinate changes, it's very difficult to do. So we're going to try to do it together this time. We think we've got a pretty good chance of getting funding from the feds on this one. So the application is due April 2nd. We'll bring it back to this board once we hear back whether or not we've been selected for further negotiations. The Amgen tour. I've got some bad news here. In the last meeting, I asked for the board to give me permission to submit a petition to get a waiver to operate charter service. I received a verbal notice yesterday that the FTA has denied that petition. They believe there's enough private operators out there that can provide this service and will not authorize us to get reimbursed to operate the service. We're already going to be running the Avalanche Beach Trolley. And what I'm going to suggest is if we can find room in our budget that we put a second bus out there and not charge Amgen for it. But it still gives us a lot of national exposure and a chance to be part of the solution for transportation to that event in Avila Beach. So we'll do some more searching in our budget to see if we can afford to put another bus out there to augment that single bus. We anticipate between 10 and 20 private buses also operating. So we were really going to take a small part of it anyway. My main concern is I wanted to get our buses out there and get some exposure, so we'll follow up on that. We have one more city to go on the JPA. We hope to have that done pretty soon. We've been working with their city staff on that one. These next few things are about budget. We'll get more into the details of that as we get into the budget assumptions. So I'm going to skip over that in the interest of time. I do want to mention that in the January meeting, we brought to your board performance measures as they relate to our performance standards. We're now finishing up the finals of those, of the portions of the non-operating performance measures. We'll bring those to the next board meeting. So we're just finishing that internally, and we'll make that part of the regular report on how we compare against our standards that were developed as part of our strategic business plan. In terms of I do want to mention, Eric brought up the issue of us not having our minutes from the executive committee at this meeting. I just want to mention that we typically, it's been our practice to have whatever board, whether it's the executive committee or RTAC, they will review the minutes before we present them publicly. So we don't have anything from, we don't have the minutes from the January 16th RTAC meeting, but in short, I just want to give you a summary, and I do mention that in my report. They do support some of the things we'll be talking about later. We also, as Mr. President, you mentioned we're going to pull item C5. We've got both members who we're recommending to be appointed to our RTAC at the meeting today, and we'll have a chance to recognize them and talk with them. In terms of financials, we're doing great. Through the end of January, that represents 58% of the budget year. It's very hard to see on the board here, but in your package, you've got information on page A15, which gives you line-by-line items of our budget results. We're at 54%. Our budget, the budget year is at 58%, so we're still doing very well. We're tight in a couple places, primarily in the vehicle maintenance side, and there's two of them. Primarily the vehicle maintenance and fuel. Fuel, we're keeping a close eye on it. We're doing well so far, but vehicle maintenance, because the vehicles are getting old, we're starting to spend more money on them, so we're seeing that in our budget results. But overall, we're doing very well with those. We don't believe we need to do a budget amendment this year based on the information we've got so far, based on the mid-year review. So we're not going to we didn't bring something to your board this meeting. Fixed route ridership is incredible. We're still 9.2% over last year to date. Slide on page A14, we've got some slides that are relatively easy to see, but you'll see them up here on the board here. Month after month, you compare this year to last year, we're almost every month we're higher. When you look at Route 9, Route 10, and then the other fixed routes, runabout, we're setting records almost every month. December was kind of a low month for us, but otherwise you'll see that we're above there. It's a challenge for us, and if you go back up one slide on your page, A17, I believe. A17, you'll see the results and the financials of these. You'll note that the cost per passenger trip, the subsidy per passenger trip on the runabout is quite a bit higher than the fixed route. That's the same anywhere nationally, so it's something that we're challenged with. But overall, our fare box recovery ratio for fixed route is almost 29.5%. Our runabout is 3.9%, and overall is 19.9%, almost 20%. We're only required to get 16%, so we're doing very well in terms of our requirements for fare box recovery. In terms of facility planning, in my report you'll note that we expected to, we met with the property owner to see if there's an opportunity to try to purchase the facility based on our lease agreement and a buyout that's spelled out in the lease agreement. We couldn't come to agreement on some of the terms of the purchase agreement, so we decided we shouldn't move forward with trying to buy that property at the terms that were identified. So we're still continuing to negotiate to try to potentially increase the lease, to extend the lease beyond March 2017, and also to look at potentially buying it at other points in the future. So we'll talk a little bit about that in item D1, which is a closed session on real estate. So that concludes my report.
Questions of the director?
I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, Mr. President, in terms of service animals, we do have adopted policies on service animals, and we are governed by the Code of Federal Regulations on service animals. Really, all we can ask somebody is if that dog performs a service for them. There's no certification of service animals, even guide dogs. My mother has a guide dog, uses a guide dog, and has for years. There is no accepted card. The only rule is you have to ask the person if that animal provides a service to them. In our policy, we do mention the idea of health and safety. If the dog or if the animal provides any challenging or aggressive behavior, we can remove the dog. If the dog is dirty, we can remove the dog or service animal. So our hands are somewhat tied here, and I understand the speaker's concerns about this. It concerns us as well, but I'd be happy to sit down with our staff again and see if we can try to tighten down the rules and regulations, or not the rules, but our policy according to the rules and regulations, to see if we have any more latitude on this. But it is a challenge for us to, we don't know if that dog is, or that service animal is going to be aggressive until he or she shows that behavior.
I think too, the other thing to be concerned about is the driver that has to pay attention to what they're doing, and then have to be aware of the fact that you may or may not, I don't know, have an animal that might be a little more aggressive, if you will. But that's a concern as well. They need to be fully comfortable with the fact, whoever's coming on board that bus.
Yeah, I just had a question about the runabout and the cost-saving measures. I think it's great to look at cost-saving measures. We have to reduce the number of the ADA rider trips, so we can't deny trips that are necessary. And so I wondered if you had considered at some place in the publicity, maybe the runabout frequently asked questions, to actually tell the public the true cost of the services. So my understanding is that it's somewhere around $60, $65 a trip, and they are only paying $5, and so it's that much. I mean, I may have the figures wrong, but there is a substantial subsidy that goes with each one of these trips, and so I was just thinking that it might actually encourage people, since most people want to save taxpayers' money, to realize that if it's an easy option to have the runabout, it's a little bit, takes a little more organization to have the fixed route. Maybe they would go with the fixed route if they want to help save taxpayers money.
We can do that. That's a great idea. Mr. Farrar?
Thank you. Well, my first question, Jeff, is are we going to take the engine out of bus 148 in Bronza and have it on its place in a million miles? No, back on the service dog issue, it's not the first time that, that I've heard, and I'm sure several others have heard of abuses, and even things like the vest that the dog wears. I mean, if you look closely, you can see that somebody did that on their home sewing machine. And so we see it, not just in public transportation, but we see it in fixed facilities like, supermarkets and places like that, where people just want to bring their pets in. And so I'm just wondering, maybe, and I'm sure you'll do this, but when you sit down to talk about it, if we can take a look at maybe what some of the other transit companies have done to really tighten that up a little bit, particularly on the hygiene issue. There has to be something out there that we can grab a hold of that would tighten this up a little bit.
Mr. Irons?
Thank you. Yeah, I have a similar question to the service dog question as well, and I guess since we're talking about the code of conduct, if you can respond to whether or not our new code of conduct would be appropriate to address some of the hygiene as far as the dogs, control, things like that. So I didn't know if that would be something you could discuss with staff as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We do have our code of conduct. When we get to that point, you'll notice we have something in there about bothering and annoying others, and certainly if a dog is not clean and bothers another person, we can deny service to that person and use progressive discipline against that person.
Thank you. Higginbotham.
Thank you. Mr. Straw, the concept of rolling into the budget using one of the buses for the Amgen tour, will that be coming back to us, that discussion?
Well, unfortunately, the timing isn't very good because we're not meeting again until May 1st.
Right.
And the executive committee will have a chance at its April 10th meeting, but I think it's the first time we can get a chance to get back with you unless we do a special meeting to discuss the costs of operating a second vehicle.
Because my concern is, in your report it says the first year of our two-year budget we're financially constrained, and so we don't know what those costs will be. And you talked about it's good national exposure, but I'm not sure what national exposure does for the RTA budget. So it would be for me, a hard nexus to make.
Yeah, we really, the only place we have room to do this is in our marketing budget, where we bring vehicles to events. For example, this weekend there's the Public Art in Motion event up in Paso Robles. We bring a vehicle up there, and it costs money to have the driver and to have fuel and everything else. So we've got that in our marketing budget, but having a vehicle run all day is an expensive proposition. So we need to get a better feel for what that would cost.
I can move right on down the line. Mr. Hill.
Yeah, I can respond to that. The tour is going to cover the transportation expenses, including shuttles and so forth like that, so that will be part of the agreement. And that has always been understood, both working with the tour and the BID, that those expenses, including the county's expenses, are being covered.
Anyone else on this side? Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you, President Meacham. My only comment, Jeff, would be if we're going to do the tour, then we use it as a kickoff for our Kids Ride Free summer program. I think that'd be a perfect way to start off and get that advertisement out to the public and everybody involved.
It's a little bit early. We typically start that in the summertime, but it's a few weeks early, but that's certainly something we could look at least from a publicity standpoint.
Anyone else on this side? Mr. Irons.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did want to respond. I think it was great to recognize our employee of the quarter, driver Jules. So I just thought, that'd be, just wanted to recognize that as well as Mr. Greening, your thoughtful recognition of one of your drivers as well. So I think that's a good step for our team. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have a request thing from Kathy Boyd. Is Kathy in here?
The computer is on another way. Anyway, on Runabout, they operate, like a half an hour window can be done. But when the computer changes things to accommodate everybody, you're talking 15 minutes either way. And that makes a huge difference to disabled people. So if, when the computer changes things, they need to put a red flag on it that the dispatcher will see, so you can warn the person, you know, I'm going to be 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late, you know, so they can adjust their time. Because when you're disabled, it makes a huge amount of difference, especially if you're in the back of your house, in the restroom, or anything, you know. So that would make a huge difference. And also, I was wondering, because I used to work for Runabout, at that time, we would go out of the CCAT route and pick up. I had two people, one up in the Mesa and one up in Pozo. They were both blind, you know, so we would take them to dialysis or wherever they need to go. And those places, they really need, you know, a Runabout to come to them because they're in there a very, you know, long spot that it would be hard for anybody to get to make arrangements for rides. And see, if CCAT goes to all these places on their route, we could use CCAT. What's the point, you know, I mean, the point of just sticking to the CCAT routes doesn't really work. They should be able to go anywhere in the county for people that are disabled to live outside the CCAT routes, at least I think. And then also to make adjustments that we don't, some of us don't mind if they're going in the same general area to piggyback with other riders, you know, on the Runabout. That happens often, you know, it's like, hey, if you're going to Morro Bay and somebody else is going on Highway 1, why not ride together? We're going the same way, you know. Things aren't too out of the way. Piggyback is a damn good thing because otherwise you refuse rides, you know. Oh, also, I was thinking that if you guys sent a pamphlet to all Runabout riders or new riders for CCAT and Runabout, you know, you can tell them, hey, drivers do not carry change. You know, you gotta have exact cash for that particular ride, and you can give the fares how they rise up a quarter per section, and kind of give a, you know, a route so they can tell you every time it goes up 25 cents, and that there's punch passes available for the convenience of the rider and the driver and everybody. You know how much they are, you know how much each section goes up for riding, so you know, hey, I gotta have 325 exact turns. That makes a huge difference also. I think that's probably it.
Okay.
And as far as training goes, I used to train. I used to run about a long time ago. And I wouldn't let them drive or get behind the wheel until they could do a checkout, full checkout, without my help. They can't do it, then you can't drive.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, and we'll be talking about this Runabout in the next item is